the floor turned lava. If you fell on the floor, you would die. Right? Sometimes we would push some of the other kids on the floor so they would die and they could stop playing with us. But those are in more of my uncharitable years of being a younger person. But let's begin in prayer in the name of the Father and the Son and the Holy Spirit. Amen. Heavenly Father, we just praise you and we thank you for the beautiful weather for today. We thank you even more for the rain yesterday because it makes us love the sunshine even more. We just ask for you to come and be with us here during this time. That your words are spoken and not mine, that the words that you need people to hear fall on their ears, and that all of our hearts are open to be moved to the direction that you want us to move. We ask you to bless all of our children during this time, wherever they are, whatever activity that they're doing, that they are happy and that they are peaceful and full of joy. And we ask all this in your name, amen. In the name of the Father and the Son and the Holy Spirit, amen. First, I just want to say thank you so much to whoever thought that I was qualified to speak to all of y'all this weekend. I'm a little out of practice. I spend most of my days now speaking to 3 2-year-olds and 4-month-olds, so my vocabulary has kind of diminished over in the last couple of years, but in a good way. So I'm very excited to be here. For those of you who don't know, I did work at St. Laurence. I've worked it twice now. Father Drew said he would hire me a 3rd time, but I feel like I need to give him some time. Like I need to get a little bit more space, because I think the people who are still working there are like, really? Like, they're a little sick of me or whatever. So anyways, years ago I was in charge of the high school program. So the Forest Glen is almost like a second home to me because we were here 2-3 times a year doing different confirmation retreats. Some of you I know because you used to be on my core team. And then I left, got married, had a baby, came back, started teaching or running the elementary CCE program at St. Lawrence. So now I know some of you from that for various levels as parents, catechists, people who just came to hang out, and then I had a baby doing that, and then after that I quit, had another baby, and now we're here today. So we're really good at some things in life. So anyways, when I got the topic, the name of this talk, the family that plays together stays together, I had a good chuckle, like, oh, nice little play on words there. And so I'm like, what do they want me to talk about? And I was like, should I just bring board games? And like, we just like, maybe I should have brought a how-to on how to play Hot Lava. So maybe we'll do that later. But anyways, I was like, what do they do? And then I was like, what does the Bible say about play? And so I went to BibleGateway.com and I put in play. And then, of course, all the references that came up were like, she played the harlot. And I was like, pretty sure that that's not the emphasis that they would like me to focus on for this talk. So there has to be another venue or whatever. And then I just kind of sat and I was thinking about my family and my life, and my family, I'm number 2 of 7. I have 4 brothers and 2 sisters, and we range in age. My older brother just turned 36 yesterday, and then we have my sister Lydia will be 14 in May, so that's our age span. So we're all over the place, but the first several of us are all one right after another, and I'm like, we spent a lot of time together as kids. We did a lot of crazy stuff, and we used to make up games all the time. Some of them we had to stop playing due to injuries that would happen. So, like, we played this game called Bus Driver, and it was there was just 3 of us at the time. So my older brother Brandon was the driver, and then I was the lady who sat in the back of the bus, aka the wagon, and I would get to a point in the basement and I would forget my luggage. So this is very creative. And so we would get to the point in the basement and I'd be like, oh, I forgot my luggage! And then I'd have to, my brother would fling the handle of the wagon and, trump back to the station and get my little suitcase and bring it back, and then we'd finish our lap around the basement, because I'm from St. Louis, so we have basements there, which are awesome, and I totally mourn them here in Texas. But anyway, so then my younger brother, Ryan, never wanted to play bus driver because he was just the passenger. He didn't really have a role. We didn't really trust him with much, and so he sat in the front of the wagon, and every time I forget my luggage and the bus driver, Brandon, would throw the handle back, and Ryan would get hit in the head, and he would cry, and we'd be like, oh, whatever, blah, blah. And this one particular day, he didn't want to play because he was like, I just get hit in the head. My Brandon was like, I promise, we're not going to hit you in the head. And he even, demonstrated, he's like, I'll very nicely, take the handle, and I'll put it here, it'll be fine. And so we totally convinced him to play because the game would not work unless Ryan was sitting in the front of the wagon, so like we had to play this whole thing together. And then sure enough, I get to my point in the basement and I'm on cue and I forget my luggage and I make the big, drama about it. And then so Brandon flings the handle back, and not only did he like fling it, but like a little extra hard because that particular day he hit Ryan so hard in the head. He had to go get stitches, and so we were never allowed to play bus driver again. And so anyways, we were really mad at Ryan for a while because we really liked that game. And stuff. Yeah, it is. It's Ryan. He ruins everything. No, I'm just kidding. He's one of my favorite people today. And then we used to play this game. We had one of those old play sets that were made of metal. Now they're all made of wood, but then back then they were made of, and it was like this cage thing, which whoever designed it, I probably designed prisons too, because that's really what it looked like. And we would play this game called like Free the Pandas, and all the girls were pandas in the neighborhood, and I don't know if it was like a fat joke or something back in the day, but it did well for the self-esteem later on in life. And all the boys like were the captains of the ship, and the pandas would get out, and we'd run all over the neighborhood and literally have to get like drugged back. And I think one person broke their arm at some point, so then we weren't allowed to play that game anymore. So anyways, not all of our games end in violence, but the whole point was like we were like always having fun. And these are the things that like to this day, like my brothers and I will be hanging out. We'll be like, gosh, you remember that game? Like, we're such dorks. Like, who thinks of these things, But you're like, well, that was, Nintendo, like, just came out when I was a kid, and so it was like, that was a big thing, but it wasn't really that big of a deal. And, you had, like, one thing, it was in my mom and dad's room, so we were just forced to play with each other and hang out and come up with these games and be creative and stuff. And so I think about that, and then I think even further. So I'm going to backtrack a little bit and kind of reiterate and reemphasize something that we've talked about already this weekend. Alan and his wife talked about it last night, and Michael talked about it this morning, but the importance of family prayer. Because my family, the only reason why I believe that we're still a family today and that we're still speaking on any level is because we're a family that prays together. My dad is a recovering alcoholic. For the first like 6 or 7 years of my life, he was a frat boy. So my parents met at a frat party back in college. He was like totally like the guy. He was the bartender, although I look at pictures and you're like, 70s weren't good, So the flannel shirt, the T-shirt, was open, and he had the nasty stash, that you're like, how you were not on like every wanted list, I have no idea. And my mom was like this cute little thing. She had the 70s, like flowy, fluffy hair. You know what I'm talking about? Anyways, her and her friend walked into this frat party one night, and my dad and his bartender buddy placed a bet on her, and like who would get her at the end of the night, like who would get to ask her out. And so, I'm always like, years later, I'm like, well, how did you win, Dad? Because looking at pictures, I wasn't sure. I didn't see the other guy, but I was like, I'm not seeing the connection here. But he's very handsome once he got rid of some of that stuff. But anyways, he said I just grabbed her and kissed her, and that's how he convinced her that he won the bet. And so anyways, and the rest is history. But so my parents, in the way that they kind of started out, like they were always Catholic. They came from Catholic families. They went to Mass every Sunday, regardless of whatever state they were in the night before, because they knew that was important. But then they got married and they started having children. And when my mom was pregnant with my brother Stephen, who's number 4, so they had only been married for like 6 years, and number 4 was on the way. My dad was coming home from a night out with his buddies, and she met him at the door and said, you have till morning to decide. I'm not going to live like this. You can have your family or you can have your fun, and I'll know my answer in the morning. So whether he was going to be there or not was going to be her answer. So she went to bed that night not knowing what the status of our family was going to be the next day. And of course, we don't know this as kids, right? We just think so much of our parents, but then later on in life when you hear these stories, like they really have a huge impact. And that night, my dad didn't sleep. He went through the house and threw away everything. He quit smoking and drinking in the same day, and he's been sober like 25 plus years. I'm really bad at math, but it's something along those lines. So I'm very grateful for that, because in that moment, my parents made a conscious, like intentional, deliberate decision that our family would always come before everything else. And in that decision, everything that's happened to us since then, that decision has affected how we've handled everything. And it's affected it in a positive way, because for some reason, my dad in his weird stupor made that made the right decision, like made a good decision, and it can only be that the Spirit guided him in that direction. And then he was open to it, and he was willing to do it, and he's followed through with it all of these years, despite what life has thrown at him, because life hasn't been easy. It's not like they made that decision and that was the hardest thing in life, and now, like 7 kids later, like everything is great and we're fine, and family holidays, like for like the Duggars, and just, like half that size, and without the commercial kitchen and stuff, but things still happen, but because they were founded on something greater than themselves, we've been able to weather that. And so my family, from that day, like my mom woke up the next day, and every day since then at 8:30, because that's what time the rosary comes on EWTN in St. Louis, and every night at 8:30 we pray rosary together as a family. And whoever is in the house at that time at 8:30 has to pray a rosary with our family. So we would have friends that would come, the non-Catholic friends. It would be like 8:25, and they're like running out the door, like, oh gosh, the TV's on. Like, there's that lady with the eye patch. We don't, like, God bless Mother Angelica, but they were like, oh, so they're like running out the door, and but then there's like other of our friends who basically lived at our house. Like, I dated this guy in high school, and he just started carrying a rosary in his pocket because he would be hanging out at our house, and 8:30 would come around, and he'd pull out his rosary and pray with our family. So I didn't end up marrying him, so yeah. Woo! But he was a good guy to have around. But like that was like the thing that like my family kind of got to be known for. And as kids, like I know this may be hard, but I've never been cool. I've never been popular. Like my little group of friends in elementary and middle school, we were called the leftovers. It was, one of the popular girls was like, you guys are not like super dorks, but you're like not us, and then so you're kind of just like left over. And I was like, that's so nice of you to say. Thank you so much, and God bless that girl, Kelly Laughlin. Anyways, and I don't harbor anything, although I am not her Facebook friend. And so anyways, so I've never been that cool. And so anyways, we'd be outside like playing as little kids, and then, of course, my mom, 8:30, would roll around, and the front door would fly open, and she'd yell, "Time to pray the rosary!" And we're all like, oh, God. Like, and we would pretend like, oh, it wasn't our mom, even though, like, we were, like, that family everybody knew. But then she would, like, call us by name, Brandon, Shannon, Ryan, Steven, and you're like, oh, my gosh, like, why? And stuff. But years later, I am grateful for that, and it's something that we've started to do with our family because so many things have happened in our lives, so many things, good and bad, and if we did not have that center, if we did not have that foundation, I know we would not be who we are today. And from that like solid foundation, from that center comes great joy. It doesn't always bring, like our house is still chaotic, there's still drama, there's still crises, but there is always joy amongst everything, and we're able to see it. And I feel like that is the reason why. So when Alan and Michael were talking so much and putting so much emphasis on family prayer and making God the center of your lives, it's so important, and it's never too late to start. I know that as you get older and your kids get older, it gets more difficult because they're like, we've never done this before, why are you doing this? This is ridiculous, I'm not doing this, I'm not going to be a part of this, I'm going to leave. I'm moving out, I'm going somewhere else, But it will, later on as an adult, have a dramatic effect in how they view and how they do their family when they get older. One of the questions that I came across when I was preparing for this talk was, is your home a joyful home? And that's a good question. And growing up, my home was a joyful home. Again, because I know that that's where we came from. I know where our center was, and so everything that came from that was good. Everything came from that was from God, and everything that came from that we were able to see the joy in it, whatever it was. So our house was a joyful home, and you could tell because our house was never empty. My parents, they would always set out extra food because inevitably someone would be there that wasn't one of their children. My best friend, who I've known since 4th grade, we eventually just bought her a bed from my room, so I always had 2 twin beds because she was there so often, and we would share the same twin bed, but it was like, eventually, like, Gina, like, we're juniors in high school. I feel like this is ridiculous. go get in your own bed. So we did. She had a bed at my parents' house, and she had the code to the garage, right? So we'd be like sitting there, and our front door was never locked, so the front door would open or the garage door would open, and whoever would come in. If the doorbell ever rang, we'd always be like, "Did you order food?" Like, we never knew what it was because people just came in. But that was our house. Like, my parents chaperoned every dance, every field trip. My dad, when I was a junior in high school, chaperoned our junior class trip to Chicago. So in St. Louis, that's like a 5.5-hour drive north. And we just went for one night. And my dad was the only dad that went. Every other mom went, but my mom could never go because there was always little ones at home. So my dad went, and my dad, it was so funny. So in Chicago, there's like the Navy Pier, and there's sailors that run the Navy Pier, and as juniors in high school, it was an all-girls school, okay? So it was like incredible to see them on multiple levels. And there was like a limo of them that drove by, and we were like, like we should have been on our bus, and the nuns were all like, "Get on the bus!" My dad jumped off the bus and flagged down the limo of sailors, and all the sailors got out, and all of us friends like got our pictures taken with the sailors and stuff. We couldn't get in trouble because we were with the chaperone. We're like, yeah, sorry, sister. Anyways, and but things like that, and to this day, like when I reminisce, I run into someone who I went to high school with, like, do you remember, like, when your dad, like, got the sailors to come out of the limo, and, you're like, yes, like, these are all wonderful, great things, but again, like, it goes back to, my dad had this joy that came from somewhere else. My dad had this joy that came from somewhere within. My dad had this joy that was never ending, and no matter what was going on, it was never going to kill it. When your family lives for God, it can be synonymous. Like, people were talking about what makes a holy family, and we said, like, harmony, peace, happiness, all of those things can come synonymous with your family if you have a holy family. And a holy family, or a holly family, could be, I say that because you just did it on Facebook, how to explain, yeah, our name is Holly, but it's spelled holy, so you really are like a holy holly family. So, already, you have beat us all. It's true. Gormley. It is. It's true. I'm sorry. I'm not knocking your last name. I mean, I took it. Rothkopf was my maiden name. So, anyways. So, German to what are we? Scottish now? Something? Whatever. I don't know. He's told me. I don't remember. Anyways, we're working on that communication. Anyways, that's later, right? It's only been almost 5 years. Anyways, so where to begin? Like, how do you even come close to finding a holy family, or creating a joyful family, or a family that plays together? You guys ever seen the movie The Patriot with Mel Gibson? It's a really horrifically violent movie. I like to watch it on TV because they like change the color of the blood to make it like brown. So you're like, oh look, there's like dirt all over them, Really, you're like, no. But anyways, it's a little less graphic. In that movie, while he's teaching his young son to shoot British, he says the phrase, "Aim small, miss small." And I love that phrase, not for shooting British, but for application to life, because whenever you're going to start something, if you're going to start something like your personal prayer life, if you're going to start something with your family, aim small, miss small, right? So like if you set up like okay, this year, like we've never done a family vacation, so we're going all out. We're going to go to Disneyland, we're going to ride every ride, we're going to stay, in the middle of the park, we're going to do all this stuff, and, like children are going to love everybody in costume, even though, they freak out at Chuck E. Cheese. It's going to be fantastic, And then you plan this whole thing, you like spend your retirement already on this family vacation, and everybody is crying, everybody's miserable, and you can't leave your hotel room because your children are paralyzed by fear as Pluto's going to be waiting for them outside, right? So aim small, miss small. Maybe that's not the best way to go about, like your initial family, like bonding time together. But aim small, miss small. You guys can do so many things. Vacations, if you already do them, like continue them. Game nights. My dad, again, going back to his frat days, he's like a card shark. He's also really good at pool. So he did a lot in college. And so that I benefit from to this day. But anyways, he used to love to play cards, and when we got old enough, like that was the big deal to like play cards with my dad, right? Because my dad, for a lot of life, he's like dad's, like very stoic. He's the unemotional one, This boy broke my heart one time, not you, honey, somebody else, and we'll save that story for another day. But anyways, and I was really devastated. We had been friends from high school for like 9 years, and we decided to date, and it was horrific and terrible, and then he dumped me, and I was heartbroken, and my dad called me one night, and at midnight, he's like, I've just been thinking about you, Shannon. And you're like, okay, Dad, thank you. You know, as I'm like sobbing hysterically, and he's like, you just got to put all your emotions in like a shoebox. And then you got to take that shoebox and you got to put it on top of your closet. And then someday you'll look at that shoebox on top of your closet and you're going to say, I'm ready to take that shoebox and throw it away. It's like, okay, thanks, Dad. No idea what really I was supposed to do with that information. But he really felt the need to share it, and I thought that was very sweet. Like, he thought of me, he was worried about me, and in his very dad way, like that was as emotional as he could get in that moment, you know, and connect with me on this level with that breakup situation. But it meant a lot that my dad did that. So whenever my dad wanted to play games, and just this past Christmas, when I got to be home for like a month with all my kids, which was fantastic. Michael was traveling a lot, so it was great just to be at home with my parents, and my dad's like, you know, we haven't played Phase 10 in a long time. And I was like, let's play Phase 10. So like my dad and I had like this epic game of Phase 10, you know, like, which is just awesome because we're just, and now we're not talking about anything big, we're not moving mountains or changing the world or solving any problems, like we're just being together, and it's incredible because it lets me know again and again that my father is always there for me, that I can call him for anything, I can talk to him about anything. Probably the time of the month he will sweat a lot, but he would listen, you know, and then probably kindly pass the phone to my mother, you know, who then would pick him up off the floor and help him through the rest of the day. Crafts is something I like to do. I'm a Pinterest freak, and so my kids and I are like, we have a bin of craft stuff, and even now, like, when our friends come over, little Maggie Frank, who Chris is the youth minister, their daughters came over the other day, and she's like, Miss Shannon, can I have glue? And so we just glued, like, for like 2 hours, and when Grace came to pick him up, she was like, I have to like buy stock and glue because that's all Maggie wants to do. But anyways, that's something that we have fun doing together. Any kind of playtime with your kids. Sometimes, right now our house is, I think all of you know, our house is on the market, and it's just, I am a neat freak. I don't know how many of you really know that about me, but like my playroom is labeled and organized, and I'm just weird about stuff like that. My cabinets are, anyways. Sometimes it's hard to live with me, and I understand, but it's part of me, so you just have to love it. Anyways, and so putting your house on the market is a little bit stressful, but there have been times in the last couple weeks where my daughters have like yelled at me, like, stop, you know, you can't pledge that surface anymore, you know, and we had to go outside, like, and it was great because it was good times to remind me that they're the ones that are important, not, you know, like whether or not there was a flake of dust that fell on my countertop in the last 5 minutes, you know, so going outside, playing with them, being silly with them. My girls are obsessed with Frozen, so we have the soundtrack playing. They're dressed in every tutu and tiara that we have, and I've convinced them that brushes are microphones, which is awesome. So that's what we're doing right now, but it's fun. Like they are fun. They are expressing. These are fantastic things for them. Playing cards, family movie nights. One of the first times Michael ever came to visit my family, we had a family movie night, and so all of us were there. Spouses and nieces and nephews, and we watched the movie Cheaper by the Dozen. So Michael always says we watched it and then we lived it, because immediately following the movie something happened and this massive dog pile happened where all of us, my older brother to Lydia, who was only like 6 at the time, like she's in the middle of the pile. Like, anyways, I don't even know really what happened or how it got resolved or whatever, you know. And so anyways, but Michael always says that, like, we were watching it and then we were living it, and somehow everybody lived. So anyways, but the point is, it doesn't matter whatever you want to do, whatever it is about your family. The great thing that I love about families is that every family is different, right? So your family is different from my family. Things that we love to do, you're like, oh my gosh, no way, I'm never going to do that, you know. And some things that you do, we have friends who love, like, they love to go on hikes and picnics, like they live in Austin, so there's lots of fun places to go, but I'm just like, ooh, outside. You know, like in the wilderness, you know, like ants, not my thing. You know, like I'll play on our play set, jump on our trampoline, you know, because it's 5 feet from my house, and I can go inside and get refreshed, you know, like, but a day out in the wilderness is really not my thing. You know, camping, although I do want to live in a trailer park at some point in my life, so I'm a conundrum. I just want to live in a trailer park. I'm jealous of your RV. I don't know why. But anyways, I'm sorry, that's off track. But anyways, So be intentional about whatever it is that you want to start doing with your family. Pick something that you guys want to do. Ask your children, like, what is something that you guys like to do, want to do, would like to see us do together? Really, it doesn't matter. Share your life with your children. Be active in theirs, and more than just being their chauffeur. Over the years, I've met so many parents, and literally they just live in their cars, which my mother did it, and then she got to the point when Alan and Danae were talking last night about how they just took a year off. Like, my mom made everyone, we were allowed to pick one thing, and that was it. So we had to choose, like, Girl Scouts or volleyball, and for some reason I chose sports, even though I am not athletic at all, but I did. But everyone chose one thing, and that was the only thing you were allowed in, because my mom was tired of driving just from here to there and dropping us off, because there was no connection. We were literally just passing each other throughout the day. So be more than their chauffeur. My dad, when I was in high school, I was on our cheerleading squad. Okay, I loved it. No, I was not cool, because I went to an all-girls school and I cheered for our all-girls state-winning volleyball team. So I didn't get any scholarships offers for my cheerleading abilities, and I'm pretty sure the only reason why I made the squad in the first place is because I could stand on the bottom of a mount and I wouldn't fall over. But like, I watch videos and stuff, and you're like, like it's a little humbling, the time I was naive and like, oh, this is so fun. And anyways, could barely do a cartwheel and jumps. It was like 3 inches off the ground. You're like, yeah. But anyways, but my dad again. I feel bad because all these stories about my dad, I guess I'm in a dad mode, but my mom was always there for stuff too. She just, again, always had little ones at home, so sometimes it was harder for her to come be at things. My dad came to every one of my volleyball games. Not because I was a stellar cheerleader, not because I was, like the best on the squad, and not because he has an overt love for cheerleading. He came because it was important to me that I loved cheerleading. I had a great time doing it, and that was his way of showing that he supported me in doing that. Again, he even, like, when our team went to state, like, he rented a hotel room, and he came to state just, again, like, to be a part of my life, which, again, means a lot to me. So he's not a cheerleader. He was not a male, one of those guys. So anyways, he made it a point to be there for me, which meant a lot. Show affection to your kids. Show affection to each other. It doesn't mean, my parents would always, like, they'll kiss when they walk in, and then, as kids, you're like, ugh, like, you throw up everywhere and stuff. But, like, I know that they love each other. Like, I know that there's, like, kindness there. I've been to other friends' houses where, and I remember this one family I used to babysit for, and they were awful. They never touched. They never, like, smiled. They never did anything, and I was always like, this is really like, because I felt like I was, like, shouldn't be there. Like, I just walked in on something that I shouldn't have walked in on, but they weren't, like, there was just nothing there. And then the kids, it reflected on the kids because they weren't affectionate. They didn't know what to do because it wasn't, there was obvious thing. Those people ended up getting divorced later on, which was very sad. And stuff, but be affectionate, like, show that you care about one another. Speak that way about someone. My husband's oldest brother and his wife, they are like the king and queen of sarcasm, and they have 8 children. So that's how the kids talk. Everyone talks so sarcastic that it's so hard to get, like, a real answer out of them. And I said, that's really sad because they don't know how to communicate without, like, they can't say, like, oh, yeah, I love you, They can't just say, like, I love you. Like, they can't do that, And at some parts in life, like, sarcasm is funny, but, like, when it comes to things, like, and I just think of the things that my family has faced in life. Like, if we are sarcastic at times, but we are able to, like, share things with one another and to express things to one another. And I'm grateful that we're able to do that because there are times where that's necessary. And if, like, something is happening and all of a sudden now you have to figure out how to, like, speak to them without it being, like, totally weird and awkward, like, your brother's going through something and you're like, man, I love you, and he just looks at you like you have 3 eyes, you're like, this is not okay. So speak kindly to one another. Work on that. My family was not always perfect or without drama, like I said, but we always seemed to weather through whatever came down the pipes and laugh about it in the end. Another story about my dad is I was dating this guy. My prom date for high school was a blind date. I let my friends do that. Anyways, it was awful. Anyways, Tim the welder, he was a keeper, and he had a shaved head, and he had like tattoos and like an earring, like totally bizarre. And of course, like he comes to my house like after, like 2 days after prom to like meet my dad, because I met him at prom, whatever. My dad was like instantly like full of like so many negative things towards Tim the welder. And so Tim worked at a welding place right up the street from my high school, and one day I got out of school early, so I was meeting Tim for lunch. And sure enough, we're sitting at lunch at this restaurant, and I see this car drive by, and I just go, all right, well, Tim, my father's joining us for lunch today. And Tim goes, excuse me? And I go, absolutely. And sure enough, here comes my dad, and he just grabs a chair and sits down. And all the men in my family do this thing with like their hands, like when they get excited. So he's like, and he sits down, and he just starts talking and sharing all this stuff, and you're just like, oh my gosh. Again, now I'm laugh about it, and I think it's funny at the time. And then he went back, and he was like getting high-fived at the office, like, way to go, Mike, Anyways, God love him. And then the last thing I want to say is think about the future. Okay, no kid ever goes to therapy. No, no kid grows up and goes to therapy and says to their therapist, like, my family is awful. They always asked me growing up how I was doing. They told me that they loved me. We did things together. Like, they showed me affection. Like, they were awful. Can you believe that? Like, no one goes to a therapist to say those things. The kids that go to therapy, the things they say are, I didn't know my father ever cared about me. My family never did anything together. My parents never asked me how my day was. My family never had meals together unless it was a holiday. Those are the kids, and that's what they say in that time in their life. So think about what you want for your kids down the road. Like if they ever went to therapy, do you want the therapist to laugh them out the door saying they have the best life ever? Or do they really have something to say about you and your family and have some legit ground to walk on that something was lacking? Okay, so that's the challenge for all of us as parents, to make sure that we're feeding our kids not just for today and not just for ourselves, but so that someday they can go out into this world and they can set it on fire. And they're capable of doing that if we all work together. The talk later on tonight or tomorrow is on community, and it's great that we're all here together. You're all St. Laurence School families, and you're all hearing the same thing this weekend. So just imagine if all of us together started implementing these things in our lives, and your kid starts talking to their kid, and they're like, my family's doing this. They're like, my family's doing it too. And then it becomes less weird and less awkward and more of a fun thing that we can do as community. And even they talked about doing things together, like families together. It can be awesome. So cherish it. Make the best of your kids, because we all know they go away too fast. My kids are Kateria will be 4 this summer, and I'm already like weeping. When she goes to college, there'll be like claw marks in her door. I'm sure of it. I'm not going to be able to let go of that. But cherish it, and thank you again so much for allowing me to be here today. And God bless all your families. Thank you.